that, why don't we actually start with our weekly art talks, which is probably our most popular segment of our weekly town hall and vaudeville show. So I want to give a little bit of context before we actually get started with the art talk. Sarah, if you don't mind, I'll just spend a minute. So we've kind of been meandering, but linearly meandering through a part of art history. Kind of the broader context is, from the Renaissance period, particularly in Europe, we experienced this classical period, and then subsequently, the neoclassical period, where really much art was kind of really built around certain rules, so to speak, around aesthetics of what art should be. And then we kind of moved into what was then considered the realism period in the 1800s, which also kind of paralleled incredible advances, particularly in Western Europe around scientific discoveries, democracies forming, those sorts of things, nation states. But the realistic period is really just that. It was about in art reflecting as realistic as possible, whether it's landscapes or portraits, and that's kind of where the Dutch masters really excelled. And then we moved into the Impressionism period. I think we covered Renoir in the Impressionism period, where it was really more about the visual impression of what was realistically was being portrayed. And so there you see a much softer palette and depiction of light as the key element there in terms of the impression of what was real. And then, and this is kind of where it's pertinent to Klimt, is moved into the Expressionism period, where realism is actually expressed in a very different way. It's more kind of the emotional reaction of the artist to what they were seeing or what they were painting. And so kind of moving farther away from a realistic depiction of what was being painted. And then, of course, and we will move into this abstract art. Keep in mind that many artists lived long lives and they actually painted in the different overarching genres that I just described. But with Klimt, he comes from the German-Austria school. He's Austrian, I think lived for a period of time in Vienna, but I think Sarah will actually correct me and tell us more about Klimt. But Klimt really, I think, is a pretty good example of Expressionism. And so I'm going to hand it over to Sarah.
Hi, everyone. It's good to be back. I was gone last week. Yes, thank you for that introduction, AJ. So Klimt was born in Baumgarten, which is near Vienna in Austria-Hungary in 1862. His father was a gold engraver, which we'll see how that affects his career, Klimt's career later in his life. And all three of the Klimt sons, I think there were 7 kids overall, but there were 3 sons, and they all showed artistic abilities at young ages. Gustav enrolled at the University of Applied Arts in Vienna, and one of his brothers, Ernst, also attended the same school. And the 2 of them, plus a friend of theirs, Franz Mach. Also, I'm sorry if I mispronounce any of these names. I don't speak German very well. Franz Mach created a group, and they called themselves the Company of Artists. And by 1880, they were already receiving many commissions, mainly doing murals and ceilings and paintings and things like that. So AJ kind of touched on this. Klimt has a really unique style. He's classified as a founding member and eventually the president of the Vienna Secession movement. This was a group of artists at the time that rejected the Association of Austrian Artists, which was kind of the old way, the traditional kind of club of artists. And they rejected their traditional styles of art, of painting, of architecture, etc. And it's closely related to Art Nouveau. The Vienna Secessionists is related to Art Nouveau. Their mission statement at the group's founding was to establish contact and exchange ideas with artists outside Austria, to dispute artistic nationalism, and to renew the decorative arts. So let's check out. All right. So this is the auditorium of the Old Berg Theater. This was done in 1888, finished in 1889. And as I mentioned, this was commissioned commissioned work to the Company of Artists, which was the two brothers and their friend that I mentioned prior. But this was an important job for Klimt in his early career. The Vienna City Council wanted to record and remember the theater before its demolition in 1888. And the Berg Theater was a very prestigious place at the time. And when it was leaked that Klimt would be commissioned to do it, people solicited him to include their faces on the painting. Because of the social status that was attached to attending the Berg Theater, people wanted to be immortalized with their faces included. And this painting is great. It serves not only as a record of the theater's architecture, which is why it was originally commissioned, but also as kind of a roster of the city's political, cultural, and economic elites at the time. A few of the people it includes are Austria's prime minister at the time, Vienna's mayor, and Johannes Brahms, amongst others. This is titled Pallas Athenae. It was done in 1898. And as I mentioned before, the Vienna Secessionists wanted to stray from traditional art practices and styles. However, while they wanted to stray from tradition, they still had an interesting relationship with the past, specifically with the ancient Greek and Roman past. This is a painting of Athena, the Greek goddess of wisdom. And we can see a kind of hazy or blurred aspect of the painting, which allowed Klimt to highlight Athena's androgynous nature. She's wearing armor, signifying her as a warrior in a more masculine light. But the only more feminine aspects of this painting would be her long hair, which even so kind of blends into her helmet and her metal vest, and the figurine of Nike in her hand. One of Klimt's most famous quotes is, "All art is erotic," and I'll keep it G-rated, but he was exploring kind of Freudian ideas, and Freud was just about to, at this time, release his seminal work. So it was the idea of femininity in relation to the male gaze, and that traditional femininity had to be covered up in order to attain more powerful status. This work is, I've seen it as some of your backgrounds today. This is definitely one of his more famous works. This is titled Adele Bloch-Bauer I, and this was done between 1903 and 1907. This piece was commissioned by Ferdinand Bloch-Bauer, a powerful Viennese banker, of his wife Adele. And this was at a time in Klimt's career where he was using lots of gold leaf and silver leaf in his art. And it's fitting that this painting colloquially goes by The Lady in Gold. This painting mixes the real with the abstract. Her dress kind of seamlessly dissolves into the background, and she's sitting on a chair to pose for this picture, but Klimt didn't paint a literal chair. It's just merely the illusion of a chair. And what I found funny is I was reading when this painting first came out, people were saying it's more Blech than Bloch, because her last name was Bloch-Bauer. But Blech actually means tin in German. So they were saying it's more metal with all the gold leaf than it was actually a painting of the woman herself. And this painting has a lot of interesting history behind it. The Bloch-Bauers were Jewish, and their assets were targeted by Nazis. This painting was stolen by Nazis and housed in the Austrian Gallery Belvedere. And they had the name changed to make it seem as if no theft had taken place. And Adele died in 1925, and her husband Ferdinand fled to Switzerland and eventually died in 1945. However, before he died, he left his paintings, which included this painting and 5 other Klimts, to his nephew and 2 nieces. And in 2000, one of his nieces, Maria Altmann, filed a lawsuit against the Austrian government to reclaim the artwork. There's a fantastic movie where she's played by Helen Mirren. It was done in 2015 that documents this. And I'm going to put the link to the trailer in the chat right now. You can just give it a watch. It's interesting. I think the movie itself is about an hour and a half or so, but that's just the trailer. That's not too long. And so ultimately, Altmann regained ownership of the paintings in 2006 and ended up selling this particular painting for $135 million, which at the time was a record price. And the painting was eventually donated by the buyer to the new gallery where it is permanently displayed. So Klimt's style, as AJ mentioned, it's extremely personal and it's extremely unique. It doesn't necessarily fit into one, like, oh, that's definitely one style of painting. He really had a unique and a very personal and emotional way of painting that usually had to do with the relationships of the people he was painting. He ended up passing away in 1918 from the Spanish flu pandemic that was happening at the time. And I will end with this quote written about him. With the groundbreaking Secession, Klimt's primary aim was to call attention to contemporary Viennese artists and in turn to call their attention to the much broader world of modern art beyond Austria's borders. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. That was wonderful. Certainly is an unusual and interesting artist, isn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. His works are unique and very interesting.
Yeah, and that movie, I see Mark White has put a chat in there. In the chat, it is actually a good, interesting movie. So certainly recommend it. You start with the trailer.
Yes.
Anyone have any questions on Klimt?
There's actually a documentary that was made a few years before this movie came out where they interview Maria Altman, the niece herself. I'm not sure if she's still alive today, but that would be worth checking out as well.
All right, fantastic. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you.
So as always, please, if you have any suggestions of artists that you would like us to highlight, just shoot it out to us, and we'll try to accommodate that in the schedule. I think we've got a schedule already laid out through the end of September in terms of our future artists that we're going to highlight. So anyway, please send us your suggestions. Happy to accommodate it. We've done that in the past and we'll continue to do that. So, and as we go along in the rest of this town hall, Sarah, if you want to stay on, you're welcome to do that. And if there's any questions that you think of, just shout them out.